بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا people مرحبا عفوا for the slight delay there. And it's awesome to be back. We've got an amazing guest with us tonight. It's an absolute honor. I'm gonna bring the slide right before us. The esteemed guest tonight is none other than Shaykh Dr. Shabir Ali from Canada. I'm bringing you in. Shaykh, you are live. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome.
Thank you, Mufti Abu Layth. It's my pleasure to be on with you. Thank you for inviting me.
It really is an absolute honor. Seriously, Sheikh, I'm so elated by seriously having this opportunity of getting you on here. I mean, when it was suggested, I thought to myself, but I'm sure the Sheikh's going to be incredibly busy. But Alhamdulillah, it's really, it's been amazing. People are already waiting for us online. Subhanallah. I'm just going to first of all just make sure, because I know in the past there have been some on one or two sessions audio mishaps. So I'm just going to double check if you guys can just confirm that the audio is fine. I'll just double check with the Facebook people as well. All right, they're saying they're so excited, Sheikh, to be here. So let me just get a confirmation, people. If you can hear us all loud and clear, I take it you can. If there's any issues, you can give us a shout. Right, I'm getting a confirmation. Excellent. Right, so okay. Right, Sheikh. Subhanallah. I know we've briefly met in the past. You've come here on several events. It's actually been due to circumstances. Sometimes I've been away or things have been happening, but alhamdulillah, we're combined by the virtual. Sheikh, I mean, not that not as an introduction, because you require no introduction, but more into an acquaintance. For people who may have an intriguing curiosity to know more about you, your kind of where you came from in that sense, your kind of perspective of learning, how your trajectory throughout the years. A bit about yourself in your words.
Well, yeah, all praise is due to Allah, and I mention this only so that people can become aware of what benefit maybe they can hope to gain from my discourse. So I did an undergrad degree in religious studies in Ontario, my province in Canada. Then I went on to do a master's degree in basically Tafseer was my specialty, but because I was studying through the Department for the Study of Religion at the University of Toronto, many of my courses were like across religions. So I took courses regarding Judaism.
Sorry to just interrupt you slightly. Could you, would it be possible to slightly, I'm having a few people saying that your audio is coming across to them. Your audio is coming across slightly low. So some of them, I've had about 4 or 5 comments saying the sound is too low for Sheikh Shabir. They're struggling to hear you. Okay, if that's just...
Let me see what I can do about it. Maybe if I use a different if I use a different headset, then I'll speak directly into the computer's microphone. Would that work?
Sure. I mean, I can hear you fine right now, actually, but yes. I'm just thinking, since they seem to. I've had a few comments saying.
How about now? Let's try now. I've raised the microphone closer to my mouth.
Okay.
Hopefully that is an improvement.
Hopefully, I mean, I'm watching the kind of equalizer strips here that are
Okay.
picking up your sound. They seem to be picking it up well. So
Okay. So let's continue to monitor the feedback, and
yeah,
if this
sure,
is not doing well, then we'll
sure,
have to
sure.
I either have to speak louder or I have to go get a different. I'll try to speak louder as well. Okay. So then to continue, I did a master's degree in religious studies at the University of Toronto with a specialization in Islamic studies and more so in tafsir, and then that got me further into studying tafsir, and I did a PhD program at the University of Toronto as well in tafsir.
Was this, Sheikh, something that you were kind of guided towards? Was it family led? Was it a personal interest for yourself? This path.
You know, the path wasn't charted from the beginning. Like I wasn't as a teenager saying, you know, I want to grow up to be a student of tafsir. But through my work with in comparative religion and in discourse with people of other faiths, I got drawn into discourses about what the Quran actually says, vis-a-vis what the other religious scriptures say on various subjects. So then I needed to know the Quran better than I knew before. Plus, I needed to learn the Arabic language, and not having studied in an Arabic environment,
Yeah.
this has remained, one of my struggles to learn the Arabic language. Now, it so happens that the University of Toronto was um, teaching Arabic of all places. So I joined the University of Toronto primarily to learn the Arabic language. But after I'd taken a few courses in Arabic grammar and some Arabic readings, one of my classmates pointed out to me that I'm only a few courses away from getting a master's degree at the time because I already
Okay.
had my bachelor's. So then I continued and took the required courses and got the master's. And by that time, I was so enthused about studying, like I was a school kid all over again and enjoying it
Okay.
in my adult years. And so I continued to take courses that would get me more and more to read Arabic literature and Arabic textbooks. And so I got channeled into the Tafsir program, which would have me reading a lot of books in Arabic.
Okay.
But having said that, I was interested not only in the Arabic, but by this time I was very interested in tafsir for the one reason that I pointed out already, because of comparative religious studies, but also because in order to be able to deliver the message that as I was trying to deliver to non-Muslims, I felt that I needed to understand our own religion better. And our own religion has to come out of the Quran. And that means we have to understand the tafsir. And we have to understand how Muslims have tended to stray away from the Quran. And they have used other sources of knowledge and guidance in Islam, which are important in their own right, but they have used those in a way that overshadow the Quran.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know the Quran in greater depth to see how we can reapply the Quran in our present times.
Okay. And that led you to doing your PhD, which was also on tafsir.
That's right,
Wasn't it,
exactly.
Sheikh? And a bit about what kind of areas of specialization that you looked at in tafsir.
Well, in Tafsir, you have three. In our program, we had like 3 years of taking 2 years of taking courses
Yeah.
on a wide variety of subjects, but in a way that's channeling towards a specialization. And then you write your preliminary sort of thrust. You have a thesis proposal. Then you have so many years to continue studying on your own and developing and writing your thesis.
Yeah.
So in thinking of it this way, we realize that there isn't one definite narrow area. You have to have a kind of a broad knowledge. But when it came to writing my thesis was basically a descriptive work to get a better understanding of the tafsir of Al-Imam al-Suyuti. His major tafsir called the Durr al-Manthur.
Dur al-Manthur,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, mashallah. Sheikh, on tafsir, it's interesting that I was once, in fact, I discussed it once on my Monday nights, and it was a follow on comment from a discussion I'd had with some people that despite Islam, really in essence, one would assume because Islam is on the backbone to Islam is the Quran, yet historically scholars within Islam have not really been identified as the scholars of tafsir. It's been rather the scholars of fiqh. People have gravitated towards fiqh or other. Why do you think? I mean, what do you think that that's all about? Like, why? Because at first, doesn't it seem obvious that people would gravitate towards the Quran? Yet the reality hasn't been that.
Yeah, it could be because the Quran, by its very nature, speaks in a general way about subjects. It doesn't go into great detail. And so the details have tended to come from observing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in action and remembering the kinds of things that he said and did and witnessed. So these became precedent for Islamic law. And then more to the finer points, people would have new questions arising. They would go to the muftis like yourself, and they would ask, okay, well, what do we do in cases A, B, and C? And the muftis will give rulings. And those rulings become more definitive because they're right on the ground. It's no more theoretical. Here's a practical situation. So when all of those rulings, and finer points are combined, they themselves can be compiled into hefty volumes. And if one then wants to know what do we do in our real day-to-day circumstances, people tended to go not to the Quran to find the answers, because there they would just get a broad statement about major issues without the nitty-gritty of what they're asking about. So they would tend to go to these other books and to the other scholars, not so much to the Qari who has memorized and is reciting the Quran, but to the jurisprudent, to the faqih, to the mufti. And so the great scholars come to be known this way. They're, the eponyms behind the four major schools of Islamic jurisprudence, for example, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Al-Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, and so on.
I mean, that there's an interesting question that, and it applies to other factors as well, but definitely tafsir, that the first 100 years of Islam, leaning in towards the second 100 years of Islam almost, the first century and the second century almost of Islam, doesn't really see much tafsir. I mean, there's the tafsir of Ibn Muqatil and things like this, but not. I mean, what was, because what is this all about, in the sense that why were none of the Salaf, or were they inclined towards tafsir and it doesn't reach us, or were they generally not? That was not the thing that they were kind of going for, or what do you think was happening? Because that's a very intriguing question, that for 100 to 200 years of Islam, there ain't really any tafsirs that seem to come our way.
Yeah, it seems that this was a natural development, Shaykh, because you have to think of the literary scene in Arabia. Prior to Islam, there wasn't a textbook, and then the Quran became the first textbook.
Yeah.
So the earliest Muslims were busy trying to memorize and to preserve the Quran as a text. And then the elaboration of the Quran would come later on, when people start pondering it in greater detail. From everything we've been taught as Muslim children growing up within an Islamic society, you tend to think that the earliest generation was the most knowledgeable and so on. Well, they had some aspects of knowledge which we don't have. I mean, they had direct access to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They saw him in action. They knew certain things instinctively. But in terms of discursively, we have more happening later on. So, and then the discourses come to be recorded in what we have as the great books of Tafseer, starting with, in the 2nd century, we have Muqatil bin Sulaiman, and then more so in the 3rd century and in the 4th century with Abu Ja'far Tabari compiling his magnum opus in the early part of the 4th century. It's a natural development that occurred.
Right. Okay. Shukran. I mean that. But the reason I was asking that is because I had actually been asked this as well in the past. That look, what's going on? I mean the first 1 to 2 centuries, and I know sometimes Islamophobes raise these kind of questions as well. That the scholars, there doesn't seem to be tafsir, there doesn't seem to be sirah, there doesn't seem to be. They'll say that these things don't seem to be there. So what's creed? There doesn't seem to be creed. So what is so, but it's very much I agree with definitely and resonate with what you're saying, Sheikh. You found yourself on a path, after these kind of studies, coming from a background of comparative religion, specializing within within Islamic studies, and then deepening that kind of learning with a thesis on tafsir. You found yourself on many platforms debating Christians and mainly Christians, I take it, and other kind of religious scholars. I mean, was that something you wanted to go down, or was that something you just found yourself in, or what's the
Yeah,
what's the score with that?
yeah, it's. I mean, at one point, it came to the point where I wanted to do that, but naturally, like I stumbled into that. But what's the story behind that? So when I was a youth growing up in Guyana, where I was born in South America, formerly British Guyana, there were missionaries making inroads, preaching their religion to Hindus and to Muslims, and uh, they sometimes made better sense to the average Muslim who found learning the Arabic language or learning to recite the Quran in Arabic is like a chore, and then that is only one step away from trying to understand like what's the religion about, and sometimes it's just left at that step. The community does not seem to take us further to explain to us what the Quran actually teaches. It just teaches us to read the Quran and let it sound so beautiful in the Arabic language. So some people found that it made sense because the Bible was being presented to them in the English language, and everything that was being said about the faith was about ethics and good behavior and healthy living, whereas there was little on rules and regulations. And you know how people are in modern times. We don't want a creator up there to be regulating our lives down here. We just want to live our own lives. And so Christianity made its appeals to many of the youth at that time. And so that left a deep-seated impression upon me, like what are we as a religion, and what do we want to promote to the world. But it reached a crescendo when I migrated to Canada. I was only 16 years old, and there we lived in an apartment complex, and we would find that missionaries would come knocking door to door, telling us about their religions. Among these, about their religion, but among these missionaries, there were the Jehovah's Witnesses who would come and spend long hours discussing various issues. And I found at the time, as a young man, I didn't have all of the answers, nor do I have all of the answers now. But then I had even less. And someone directed me to write to Sheikh Didat's organization in South Africa because they had produced some excellent booklets, and that would perhaps help me. So I wrote to them. They sent me booklets for free. I read those, and I was better equipped to have discussions with these folks when they came back next time. And eventually, they didn't want to come back anymore. Yeah. So then I had the idea that I should go out to them. So I started visiting their places of worship, and I would sit there towards the end and then try to engage them in conversation after that. That didn't go down too very well because I found that people are protective of their places of worship. They feel that there's a sanctity there that you should not violate with a contrary message. I get that now, but at the time I was all puffed up with zeal. But then I thought, why not take it door to door as they do? And I tried that as well. And we even went to the street corners and delivered leaflets and pamphlets into the hands of passers-by. So all of that got me more and more deeply into this.
I see. Sheikh, there's been a suggestion regarding the audio settings, even though it
Yeah,
has been improved, that a few people have suggested that it may be that even though you've got the mic, but on
yeah.
the Skype setting, it's actually picking up your laptop mic.
Oh,
I'm just going to just double, if you can just double check, if
okay.
you just click the
I'll
three
I'll try
dots.
I'll try a different microphone.
Yes, so
Um,
no, just on the Skype setting. So if you
oh,
just one moment, I'm just going to switch this. Relax, people, relax. I had actually paused the mic so you couldn't hear us. It wasn't we'd gone mute. I was just checking, but it seems to be fine. We will. I mean, in something like maybe about 5-10 minutes, the Sheikh will be stopping for Maghrib Salah in Toronto, and during that time, when after Maghrib, he'll try a different mic. So, but the sound seems to be fine as it is right now, inshallah. So, Sheikh, just following on from that, this whole, this whole debating kind of scene, because it really exploded in the time of like Ahmed Didat. I mean, he was like the legend of this era. This, he really held the heavyweight belt of that. But do you feel that that era is kind of over now? This debating, or with Christians, that Christianity thing, or do you feel it's still there? It's or not? I mean, what are your thoughts on it? Because some
I
people
think
would feel.
two things need to be said about that. One is that though Shaykh Didat is to be credited with stimulating us, I just mentioned that I benefited from his booklets and so on, and that got me started off. Um, as one of the young men from my country said, Sheikh Didat made it possible for us to pick our heads out of the sand.
Yeah.
After he debated with Jimmy Swaggart, for example,
Yeah, I remember that.
we got enthused and we felt that, if Sheikh Didat, by his own admission, being a high school dropout, he could stand up to, one of the stalwarts of the Christian message and debate him in such a public manner, then we have something to be proud of. So that got us started. But the way in which he debated, we find that does not fit with many of our modern contexts.
Yeah.
So in Canada, for example, if we came across like that,
He had a
people would
very
not listen.
aggressive kind of
Yes.
approach. Yeah.
Yeah. So may Allah reward him and
Of
have mercy
course.
on him. But we're learning as we grow. And as Sir Isaac Newton said, the only reason I can see further is because I stand on the shoulders of giants. So he was our giant. So that's the one aspect about the nature of religious discourse in our modern times and the calm with which people want to see it approached. The second issue is that whereas he was debating Christians a lot, now we find ourselves needing to debate atheists a lot. And in my own experience, I've only had a few such occasions when I debated an atheist. But that's more of what we need to do nowadays. In fact, Muslims and Christians together need to be combating certain common threats that we have out there. And one of them is this neo-atheism, which we all have to stand up and face.
Yeah, absolutely, because I feel the same thing, that the era of debating Christians, or that kind of whole scene, I feel is kind of dead in my, and perhaps maybe to a great extent futile, because it's not really what is relevant to the challenge in young people when it comes to faith today. Because Christianity, like you mentioned, Jehovah's Witnesses would come to your door, they would challenge your faith. That era, which, and I remember watching Ahmed Deedat mentioning that, he said that, they came and they asked me that, show me in this book where there's a mistake then. And he said, and I hope that my life's doing has at least answered that question. And he's an absolute legend in his time for what he did. I mean, but I feel that in this day and age, the challenges have just completely changed. Yeah, so as somebody...
So on that note, Shaykh, let me take a break, pray, and
Sure.
I'll come back with a different microphone. Hopefully, your listeners get a
Absolutely.
better experience.
Absolutely. I mean, and guys, post some questions if you like till Shaykh goes away. I'm still here with you guys, right here. Here I am. Right, so... Alright, let me just check if that's... Right, so... Read your unread. Let me check if that is going through fine or not. Alright, people. Alright, so I've loaded that up again. Let me just check. Cool. Let me check, people. Right, so I have restarted that. I don't know if it's coming across any better. People are saying it's lagging quite bad. I don't know really what to do about that. That's unfortunately still lagging though. I genuinely, well, I guess we'll just have to kind of, what I can do is just maybe hope this stuff improves it right there. Alright, so it seems to be lagging. Well, I people. All right, let's take a look. I'll take a look at the chat, see what's going on. Has there been any? All right. YouTube is not receiving enough video for a smooth stream. Alright, okay, let me shut this down, stop the stream, start again.